So today is June 23rd, 2026, and this is our news brief on tech and small business. Noam Shazir, Transformer co-author and Gemini co-lead, leaves Google for OpenAI after a $2.5 billion rehire. So he's the VP of engineering at Google and technical co-lead of the Gemini model family. So announced June 18th, he will be joining OpenAI as lead for architecture research. Google paid him $2.7 billion in August 2024 to license character.ai technology and bring Shazir back. He departed less than 22 months later, a per month cost to Google roughly $122 million. Shazir co-authored the 2017 Attention is All You Need paper that introduced the transformer architecture underpinning every major frontier model in production today. So GPT, Gemini, Claude, Grok, and Llama included. OpenAI CEO Sam Altman welcomed the announcement publicly. Noam is one of the people I have most wanted to work with since the very beginning of OpenAI. AI only took 10 years. So a little more context. Shazir also designed a multi-query attention and co-authored the sparsely gated mixture of experts paper. Two architectural primitives use essentially all frontier models today, including Gemini, GPT-4, and Kimi K2.7. Google's $2.7 billion deal in 2024 was widely described as one of the largest talent acquisition moves in tech history. Shazir had led Gemini from version 2 through the 3.5 Flash series currently in production. Gemini 3.4 Pro, still unshipped as of June 23rd, was developed under Shazir's co-leadership. His institutional knowledge of his architectural trade-offs now sits inside of OpenAI. So here's some implications. Google's Gemini Nova roadmap, that's the next generation answer to GPT-6, is now being built without the architect who knew exactly where Gemini's current design is strong and where it faces fundamental limits. And OpenAI can use that knowledge to design GPT-6 to win precisely where Gemini 3.0 Pro is weakest. The AI talent war is now a significant competitive signal as benchmark scores. A single departure can reshape a model's family's trajectory. So for any team building on a specific AI provider, an architect moves and the roadmap moves with them. The risk of single provider dependency extends beyond today's tool availability to next year's compatibility ceiling. So in other words, don't stick with one flagship model or stick with one model in general. Be flexible in your AI usage. And this is another good segue on why that's important. We go back to Fable 5 ban. That story continues. This is now day 10 of it. UK exemption collapses. Anthropic mandates biometric ID verification. So as of June 2023, Claude, Fable 5, and Mythos 5 remain globally offline. Right, day 10, now I guess day 11 now, of the US government's June 12th export control directive. UK exemption proposal has collapsed. Per explainx.ai, the Commerce Department's legal framework cannot easily support selective geographic carve-outs. Anthropic updated its privacy policy effective July 8th to require government-issued ID and biometric facial recognition. The mechanism for a U.S. person's only partial restoration that keeps international access blocked. So the June 22nd Fable 5 free trial window for all paid subscribers closed today, leaving users paying full subscription prices for a model that returns API errors. So a little more context. President Trump at the G7 summit on June 18th said negotiations are going fine. His first direct comment on the ban, Anthropic's international chief Chris Kalari has said that within days on June 17th or 18th, but no restoration has occurred as of publication. Anthropic's Fable 5 topped the deep SWE benchmark at 70% pass, one on June 19th, and number one by two independent coding benchmarks. So pretty much here's the implication, right? The UK assumption collapse means international users face an all or nothing restoration timeline. The path is a comprehensive monitoring agreement, not a gradual geographic rollout. The biometric ID collection creates a new data infrastructure category with exposure under BIPA, Illinois, the EU AI Act biometric provisions, and the future S1 risk disclosures. Any business whose workflow depended on Fable 5 has now confirmed the scenario that was theoretical before June 12th. A frontier model can be pulled overnight without warning, no restoration time, and no partial geographic exemption, right? So just don't depend on any of these flagship models. Again, I go back to self-hosting, open source. Unfortunately, the models are not as good as Fable 5 right now, but it's getting closer. So we're hoping the open source will continue to be there. China commits $295 billion to domestic AI infrastructure. Huawei only, no NVIDIA. China announced a national AI infrastructure plan of 2 trillion won, approximately 265 billion, over 5 years for interconnected and national data centers. The plan mandates at least 80% domestic technology, effectively requiring Huawei Ascend chips, since U.S. export controls block NVIDIA's Blackwell series from Chinese buyers. Total investment, including power grid integration, could reach 740 billion, making this the largest single country AI infrastructure commitment on record. Concurrently, DeepSeek released DeepSeek V4 Pro, a 1.6 trillion parameter mixture of experts model trained on Huawei's Ascend 950 chips, the first major frontier adjacent Chinese model to publicly validate Huawei's as a viable training subrate without NVIDIA. So a little context, Goldman Sachs projects 7.8 trillion in cumulative US AI capex from 2026 to 2031. China's 5-year plan is designed to build a compute capacity that no US export control directive can reach or restrict. For example, like the Fable 5 ban. Z.AI CEO of Ji Tang responded on June 19 to Elon Musk's prediction that China will reach Fable 5 class capability probably Q1 next year. Tang said it won't take that long. Then citing GLM 5.2, which performed comparably to Anthropic's Opus 4.7 to 4.8 unpublished benchmarks. GLM 5.2 I played around with. It's pretty neat, pretty cool so far. I mean, I'm not as heavy of a user as some of the other models, so I can't say for sure. It is missing vision though, so that's the piece that's one of the reasons why I don't use GLM 5.2 as much. So implication, China achieves Fable 5 class open weight capability before Q1 2027. The national security rationale for the current US export control ban loses its technical foundation. A domestically available open source equivalent eliminates the uniqueness argument. Huawei Ascend V4 training milestones is strategically significant regardless of performance gap. It validates Chinese AI labs can train frontier adjacent models on domestic hardware at scale. Removing chip dependency, the export controls were designed to exploit. FERC issues historic show cause orders. AI data centers declared a national priority. On June 18th, the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission issued tailored show cause orders to all 6 U.S. regional grid operators, excluding Texas, under Section 206 of the Federal Power Act. Each operator must either defend existing interconnection frameworks or propose reforms to allow large load AI center customers to connect to the power grid faster while maintaining reliability. FERC bypassed the standard notice of proposal rulemaking process, typically a years-long timeline, in favor of target show cause orders that can resolve in weeks. This accelerated the grid infrastructure for AI. Illinois passed no data center guardrails. The Power Act mandatory environmental reporting failed in the state legislature. Governor Pritzker attempt to pause data centers tax incentives also failed, partially due to trade union opposition from construction workers. Illinois hosts 222 plus approved data centers. Projected growth would add 900% increased power demand in the Chicago area and 24 to 37 billion in electricity system costs by 2050. So the overall implications: FERC action reframes AI compute infrastructure as a federal critical infrastructure, the same policy posture governing telecoms and energy. So think of AI as now the new energy, right? Expanding regulatory exposure for AI operators from the software layer to the physical layer. Faster interconnection timelines to hyperscalers mean faster capacity expansion, which benefits inference costs and model availability for enterprise users over the 12 to 24 months as new supply comes online. State AGs subpoena OpenAI sycophancy, health data miners during IPO quiet period. State Attorney General investigation of OpenAI is underway, with subpoenas issued covering advertising claims. WPT telling users that they want to hear rather than accurate information, data handling, health data management, and treatment of minors and seniors. The investigation landed during OpenAI's IPO quiet period, the securities law window before a public listing, when investors' communications are legally restricted, adding a new category of S1 disclosure risk at the worst possible moment for a company targeting a Q1 2026 listing at an $850 billion valuation. So a little context. Theories targeting, health advice accuracy and exploitation of vulnerable populations are well-established legal frameworks. Applying them to AI models output is new, but not legally unprecedented. The state AGs have more flexibility than the federal regulators to pursue novel theories. Reuters Institute Digital News Report 2026 found that 10% of global adults now use AI chatbots weekly for news, up from 7% a year ago. Only 4% of those users regularly click through the original source articles. So it's overall good. Making sure that AI like ChatGPT and others will follow suit, right, based on this situation here, the legal case, that better information and we don't get hallucinations or made up stuff, right? Just to make you feel better because this is the answer you're looking to hope to hear. So overall, hopefully, I think this is a good thing. This is our report as of June 24th. If you want to continue to hear more of this type of news, make sure you follow and like, and stay tuned for more updates. Thank you.